Welcome into the Big Two Show. Dan Strafford alongside Joe Pisapia, recording live here at Brett Favre's downstairs bar. He invited us. He didn't invite us. We're not even sure if we're going to finish the podcast, but we'll do our best.
Chances are we'll end up doing it anyway the last minute, but we won't prepare at all.
No.
We won't do any of the practice first. We're just going to come in and do the podcast.
If we're healthy.
And be really successful. Yeah, that's probably what's going to happen.
Wranglers should call us.
Probably.
We're going to talk about wide receivers, and what Joe and I have done for the quarterback and running back podcast / vidcast / Cordell Stewart is take a look. It's funny. Take a look at kind of the second and third tiers. You know that Andre Johnson and those kind of wide receivers are going to be there at the beginning of the second round, and they're going to be the first off the board. My top five: Andre Johnson, Deshaun Jackson, Randy Moss, Reggie Wayne, Miles Austin. Those are the first five I see coming off the board.
I have same guys, basically, different order. I throw Roddy White kind of just in that next grouping after Reggie Wayne. Absolutely. You know who the top guys are, and anybody who just keeps talking about the top guys is not really helping you because you know who's good and who's not.
So we talk about kind of the second wide receiver then on good teams. You know, you look at the Andre Johnson, who's on the other side. Kevin Walter, is he going to have a big year?
Or is Kevin Walter going to be the guy on the other side? Because you're looking at Jacoby Jones, who had a phenomenal year last year coming out and returning kicks. And that's another thing we'll touch on, too, is those wide receivers that can actually get you return points in some leagues as well. So we're going to touch on all of those things, and Dan's going to kind of lead us into the wide receiver
Let's talk about one we talked about during the quarterback, but get more in depth on the wide receiver side. Chad Ocho Cinco now with Terrell Owens, Terrell Ocho Uno. Do they fit together? Will they both put up the numbers they've put up in the past, or are they going to have to share the ball a little bit more?
I think they're going to have to share the ball, and I don't think that's going to be as much of an issue as everyone else thinks. I think because of the personal relationship they have, I think they will actually go more for the greater good of the team. I know it sounds like you can't even imagine that happening, but I can't see why not. Terrell Owens is not the player he was 5 years ago, and Ocho Cinco is not necessarily as phenomenal as everyone thought he would be at one time. They need each other. All of that whole grouping needs each other, and I think that they'll have a successful season. I'd probably want Ocho Cinco just because I think he's still going to be the one, and I think that T.O. is still going to probably be the two as it lays right now.
Take a first look at another move. You have Anquan Boldin going to Baltimore, becoming the primary target for Joe Flacco, who has a great arm, pedigree quarterback, 6'5", 230, really has a great arm, has shown that he's really progressing on after coming out of Delaware. Does Anquan Boldin take that jump up to surpass Larry Fitzgerald?
Oh,
and
that's
now with
interesting.
Warner retired, and we kind of combine two questions here. Is Boldin an elite wide receiver, and does he pass Larry Fitzgerald, who now has Matt Leinart throwing to him?
I think that's an interesting point you make, Dan, is Boldin's still going to be the 1,000-yard receiver. I think as long as he's healthy, he'll still hit that plateau. He's going to get a lot of looks now as a number one there. I think it'll be good for him to get out of the Arizona situation. I think it was just time for him to move on there. And Flacco is going to love having a big target like Boldin. I think he's going to do really well there. Fitzgerald, on the other hand, I think you're going to look at a regression there. Now, for me, he's out of my top 10. You'll see him in some drafts and some average draft positions, too, where he goes. He's still going in the top 5 and sometimes even top 3 in some sites as far as wide receivers. And I don't know how you can do that, considering Matt Leinart hasn't really shown you the ability to be a consistent quarterback in the NFL. Where do you have Larry Fitzgerald as far as your rankings with Warner out and Leinart in?
I have to take a look at him between 10 and 15 as far as
Agreed.
wide receivers. I think he could still jump up to top 10 status, and even top 5 if Leinart is on. I just don't see Matt Leinart.
Do you take Colston over Fitzgerald?
I do.
Do you take Brandon Marshall over Fitzgerald?
Yeah, but
I think that's the dividing line. It's right between those two guys.
Because Marshall's on a new team. He has Henne throwing to him, and Henne's a good quarterback, but again, that's getting used to a new quarterback, getting used to a new system. Mm-hmm. I have him right around, both Steve Smith's, the Giants and the Carolina Panthers.
And be careful, too. Make sure you want the Steve Smith that you want when you draft. Don't just look for S. Smith. It sounds dumb, but you'll be the first person there who pulls that guy into your draft queue and clicks on the wrong Steve Smith. Oh, I wanted the one from Carolina, not New York.
All right, now,
it happens.
How are suspensions going to play into the wide receiver position? You have Vincent Jackson out 3 games because of a DUI. Santonio Holmes out 4 games. And then you have Roethlisberger out in Pittsburgh, so Hines Ward has either Byron Leftwich or Charlie Batch throwing.
And Mike Wallace gets knocked down a peg, too, in that second or third tier receiver, a guy who we thought was really going to take off last year at the end. Mike Wallace really had become an important part of Pittsburgh. If I had to choose, I have a good feeling about Santonio Holmes. That's just my gut instinct. I feel like Vincent Jackson will be Vincent Jackson, but Holmes has a good chance to really prove something, I think, in New York. And I think that the Jets will throw the ball a little bit more. I know he has an extra game there that he's going to miss, but if I have to take my chance on somebody, it's only about a month of the season. You're going to have Santonio Holmes for the rest of it. I think he's a good investment, even though the suspension's there.
We're sitting in Brett Favre's basement. We appreciate his having us here.
We do. We don't know how long we're going to be here for, if they're going to kick us out again or ask us to come back in. I mean, we already had to do this. Is like our 5th take of us trying to get this done, so we should probably speed
it up a little bit. But the question is, if Mr. Favre decides to hang him up, which is highly unlikely, how much of a hit do Percy Harvin and Sidney Rice take?
Rice takes a bigger hit than Harvin because Harvin's still going to sometimes run the ball if you're in a league, again, like we mentioned, that offers you points or pluses for return yardage. Harvin's a guy you want to look at. He has big play capability. Rice really became his favorite target, and I think Rice gets knocked down a peg. Berrien gets knocked down a peg, and a substantial peg at that, because the drop-off from Favre to Jackson Rosenfels is enormous. And I wrote about that on Big Two, so you can check that out on big2show.com.
Sleepers, overreaches. Who do you see as a sleeper at the wide receiver position?
As silly as this sounds, I've got 2 of them. One is more of a sleeper, but Wes Welker right now, to me, is a sleeper. I mean, this guy catches 120 balls every year. I know everyone's concerned about the knee injury, and with good cause, but if you get to check out any of the camp footage on any of the sites, you can look. He's running well. He seems to be moving around very well. I think Welker is going to have another 100-plus catches. Maybe he gets eased in for the first couple weeks, maybe 4 or 5 catches just to kind of break him in a little bit. But to me, he's definitely somebody I would target. And for me, another one, this might actually make you happy, Dan. Jericho Cotchery, to me, is a sleeper. I just feel like this is a guy who doesn't get much publicity. Every year, he's a solid wide receiver. He's not a 1, but he's a guy that you can count on to be consistent. He's going to play, and I think that the Jets will throw a little bit more than they did last year.
I'm looking at, and I can never pronounce this kid's name, and I apologize ahead of time.
Here we go.
Devin Aramashudu. In Chicago, along with Knox in Chicago. I think we're really going to have...
I love Knox in Chicago with Martz.
Yeah, absolutely, and they're going to open up with Cutler and really start to throw the ball even more than they have before. Forget about Devin Hester. He's a bust of all busts.
Devin Hester and Ted Ginn... They need that. You remember that movie Little Giants where they had to put the glue on the kid's hand for him in order to catch? That's pretty much you're pretty much going to need that for him to catch a ball. So you got to let those guys go. But Knox is absolutely correct.
And he's going to be
a burner.
He's going to be late in the draft, so you can see him 7th, 8th round, still possibly on the board. So keep an eye on him. I also really like Michael Crabtree this year. Full training camp. I like Alex Smith as far as a breakout at quarterback, and now he has Crabtree to throw to in San Francisco. I think that's going to be a great look for them. Who do you think is going to be drafted too early?
Well, Fitzgerald definitely is one of them. Kind of looking at the list as well, I think that Donald Driver's a guy that I always enjoyed. Donald Driver, he's a great football player. He's getting a little older. I think you might have seen the best of him last year. I think that he's going to start to tail off eventually here at some point. I think he might be drafted a little too high. And Steve Smith in Carolina, I just feel like you're just seeing that, again, that diminishing skill set just a little bit from Steve Smith, that it's not that he's going to be a bad choice. He's just not going to be worth where you have to draft him as a number 1. To me, he's the best number 2, kind of like how we talked about Steven Jackson.
I have to go with Hines Ward. With Roethlisberger out for however many games, 4 or 6 games when it all comes down to it. I like watching Byron Leftwich play. He's a hard-nosed player. He really goes out there and busts his butt, but he's not Ben Roethlisberger, and he's not going to get Hines Ward the ball as much. And I think Ward's still going to be drafted as a number 1 fantasy wide receiver when he shouldn't be.
And Ward will probably miss Santonio Holmes on the other side.
Absolutely.
Holmes got a lot of attention. He's a big wide receiver. Ward is more of a possession wide receiver, and I think that I agree Ward's probably going to have his work cut out for him this year.
One last question that we talked about before the show. How does the Indianapolis offense spread out the ball this season? It seems every year they have a new wide receiver coming up, a new target.
Well, last year it seemed like every week there was a new target that you wanted to pick up, and Pierre Garçon, Austin Collie, Anthony Gonzalez are returning from injury, plus you've also got Reggie Wayne, who, to me, I'll always take Reggie Wayne as my 2nd or 3rd overall wide receiver because he's money in the bank every year. I think that you get the feeling that Gonzalez is the guy that they want to succeed, so he's going to be on that other side more often than not. I think Colley's going to be more like a Brandon Stokely was. He's
Sure.
going to be in that slot. He's going to be a good PPR guy who's going to get a lot of looks. He might not have huge breakout games, but he might catch 6 to 8 balls in a game. You never know. I think Garcon is the guy who will lose out. That's just kind of my gut instinct on that. Where do you think it's going to shake out, Dan?
I think you have to look at, Reggie Wayne's just top tier. He's
Absolutely.
such a great wide receiver. Anthony Gonzalez is a good possession receiver, and he's proven that, and he's starting to get the ball more and more. I agree with you. I think that you nailed it right there. And Dallas Clark as a tight end.
And Dallas Clark's going to get his catches too.
Exactly.
So someone's got to be left out in the cold. I just think Garcon is that guy. Gonzalez is the one that they drafted, the one they wanted to succeed, and they're going to give him that full shot this year.
I think that's going to do it for wide receivers. One more name to throw out you. Don't forget Jeremy Maclin in your drafts. He's on the other side of Deshaun Jackson. Cobb is very accurate in Philadelphia. He should be going 5th, 6th round, in my opinion, because he's going to have a big year.
And my favorite name, Golden Tate. Keep an eye out for him, too. That kid's got a lot of skills, and you never know. He might actually come up big. And wide receivers, every year, there's some rookies that pop up midway through the season that can carry you into the postseason of your NFL fantasy season.
Hopefully he doesn't break into another donut shop. That's all we can hope. But live from Brett Favre's basement, don't forget we have defense still coming up, special teams, kickers. We've already taken a look at running backs and quarterbacks. We have a foolproof way to choose kickers. You'll see that on the next
It's gonna
episode.
blow your mind.
Come back for more on The Big Two Show.